huge game coming up. I mean, it's arguably could be the biggest game of the season, right? Like if you were to just pick one before the year starts, the Lions coming into Green Bay feels like not a must win, but it's like, if they get this win, it starts the season off on a high note. What are you most excited to see and hoping to see from your Packers?
Yeah, that's just so many different ways that you could kind of go with that answer.
Oh, yeah.
Micah Parsons is obviously on top of the list. I think anytime there's a new season that starts, you just kind of want to see the pieces and what they kind of look like. And you have just this unbelievable litmus test in week one. I think so much of the conversation that dominated 2024, and we talked about it in the past, was they beat up on a lot of not great teams. Maybe the Houston Texans being the one team that they kind of got that win against. But when they went against good teams, Minnesota, Detroit, Philly, they went 0-6 in those, against those three teams in those 6 games, and just kind of couldn't come up with the big wins. Meanwhile, they went 1-5 in the division. They were a blocked field goal away from going 0-6 in the division. Mm-hmm. So now you're talking about, you've got this huge division game. Dan Campbell and the Lions have definitely kind of owned you a little bit as of late. And you could not win big games last year. And now it all of a sudden, week one, there's no rest. There's no escape from it. You've got a huge game in the division, week one. And to your point, like it's not hyperbole to say how huge this game is, because the top of the NFC North could easily come down to just one simple game or a tiebreaker if you ultimately get the tiebreaker, between everything. So yeah, this does feel like a huge game. And then of course, Green Bay right after it has a Thursday night game against Washington. So there's no rest after. You don't want to start 0-1 against Detroit and then feel like that Washington game is really a must win so that you don't go 0-2. Like the pressure sort of starts to get pretty intense really quick if you lose this game. So Micah Parsons, how they do against a really good team right off the bat. And I think the other thing too is kind of the flip side of this trade, right? Yes, you got Micah Parsons. You did give up Kenny Clark, and Kenny did not have his best season a year ago. We know part of that was due to injury, but now you've got on the interior of the defensive line, no Kenny Clark, no TJ Slayton. Devontae Wyatt has not really been a run defender in his career. Colby Wooden put on like 20 pounds to try to be a bigger run defender. It seemingly has worked, but that's a big jump for him. Like all of a sudden he's probably starting next to Devontae Wyatt. Carl Brooks, not really a run defender. And then you've got a 6th-round pick in Warren Brinson and an undrafted free agent rookie in Nasir Stackhouse. That's your rotation on the defensive line. And I'm very interested to see right off the bat, because I guarantee you that new interior of the Lions, which everyone's expecting to be a downgrade, is now going against the Kenny Clark, TJ Slayton less defensive line of the Green Bay Packers. Who wins that battle on the inside? Because if Detroit can just get that yardage and there's no pressure inside on Jared Goff, it's advantage Detroit. And if Green Bay can stuff with their new defensive tackles and get some pressure inside on Jared Goff, to me, it's a huge advantage for Green Bay. So those are, I think, a few of the things that I'm really looking forward to in this one.
Yeah, going against that Lions line is always a tough matchup. And the thing that makes Jared Goff so difficult to deal with is even when you get him under pressure, you still have to finish the job. I remember against the Vikings last year, and was the October game, we were able to get pressure on him on 50% of his dropbacks. And on those 11 pressures, he was 10 for 11 for 164 yards. And
that game
touchdowns.
Was brutal.
It's like Flores was able to scheme things up and get guys in there. But Jared Goff can be a monster even under pressure. You need guys that can actually tackle him, which is very, very difficult. But if there's anybody who's going to be able to do that, Micah Parsons is there. Yeah. Similarly, like against this Lions team, if they dominate you against the run, it doesn't matter how good your pass rush is, right? Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he's going to be the best running back in the league this year. David Montgomery is maybe the best number 2 in the league this year. Like their running game is incredible. Now, obviously, there's a new scheme coming in, so we'll see how much that affects things. And that might be a window for the Packers week 1. But if you get dominated on the offensive line, like this Lions team did to so many people last year, game's over before it starts.
Yep. I totally agree. And I'm just curious from both of your standpoints. Paul, you've done too much hosting so far, so I'm going to ask you on this one. As obviously from a Vikings point of view, as you guys watch this game, other than A, the meteor, or B, both teams just look terrible, like what are you watching for? What are you interested in? What would give you concern for the season if you saw it? And what would give you guys some maybe hope for as Vikings fans if you saw it as you're watching these two teams? Because I'm equally as interested, and we'll get into it later with Bears and Vikings for that very kind of similar reason.
So I actually think I'm looking at the Packer offense versus the Lion defense, because either way, if the Packers offense comes out and lights the world on fire, the alarm bells are going off, right? Like Jordan Love can be a problem. They have Golden there, first round receiver. That will be an issue. On the other side of things, if the Lions, as they're going to continue to get healthier as the year goes on, but if the healthier Lions defense comes in and shuts down the Packers, then it's like an Aiden Hutchinson's there and he's getting sacks. Then I'm going, oh my gosh, Detroit is like Detroit now is probably the number one team in the entire NFL. So I'm really excited to see the healthier Lions defense coming up and playing against Jordan Love, who should be healthier himself, right? With a couple new weapons in play. And that's what I'm looking forward to watching. And if Love comes out, and again, I keep bringing up 2023, and I shouldn't do that anymore because that's, it's so far in the past. But if Love comes out and he looks like the top 10 quarterback that everyone's expecting him to be this season, that's when I think I look at the Packers and say, okay, with Parsons now, this is a team that's a serious threat. Because in my mind still, I need to see it, right? I want to see Love get back to that level, and then they're a problem to me. So I'm watching the Packer offense versus the Lion defense.
I'm watching both of the offenses in this game because I'm confident in the Vikings defense. I think if it comes down to a defensive battle, we've got a lot of playmakers, guys who can generate turnovers. Like there's a possibility we'll be able to win those games. I am not confident about our offense winning an absolute shootout. So there's reason to be nervous about both offenses, right? Jared Goff has done very well in the offense that he's had with Ben Johnson. But we also saw at the beginning of his time with Detroit, there is not a guarantee that Jared Goff and the Lions offense will create success. Similarly, like Jordan Love has had a lot of ups and downs. If it's a defensive dominated division, I think the Vikings defense at all levels has the talent to stick with those guys. Maybe Justin Jefferson can make a play because he's one of those guys who in almost any game will get something. But if these offenses for both the Lions and the Packers look unstoppable against what should be two pretty good defenses, I'm going to be sweating.
Andy, I actually have a question for you as far as, the potential concerns. The cornerback room in Green Bay, like where do you stand on that right now? Because Hobbs is a little banged up. Like, how confident in that unit are you?
It's a great question. That's another one of the really interesting aspects that I'm excited to kind of keep an eye on. If Hobbs can't play, I'm expecting we're going to get a huge dose of Nixon and Valentine on the outside, with then Javon Bullard in the slot would be my guess.
Yeah.
I am very interested because I think the idea is going to be on early downs to put Bullard in the slot and then Nixon and Hobbs on the outside in general if everyone's healthy. And then on obvious passing downs, take Bullard out, put Hobbs in the slot and bring Valentine off the bench. I think that's their ideal goal. So I'm very curious in this one is when you get to obvious passing downs with no Hobbs, are you going to bring in somebody for Javon Bullard because you don't really want him in those obvious passing downs in the slot? Does that mean Bo Melton is playing corner? Are you bringing in one of your other younger corner? Like, I guess it would have to be Kamal Haddon at that point. That is very interesting to me. I think they're just going to keep Bullard on the field. But I do have some concerns about is Javon Bullard going to be matching up with Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot? That gives me a lot of cause for concern. Here's how I view this defensive backfield as a whole. I go back to last year, and I don't think it was a fluke. It was a large enough sample size. A.J. Brown tore him apart in week 1. And pretty much after, and that was actually against Jair Alexander to a huge extent of all people. And then after that, they really did not allow 100-yard receivers. They kind of kept everyone in check. Yes, they were going to get some plays from time to time, but it wasn't going to be catastrophic. You didn't see Jefferson going for 180 or Amon-Ra St. Brown going for 180, DJ Moore, etc. They kind of held receivers under 100 yards and kept them under wraps. This was a really, really sound zone defense that Jeff Hafley had them running last year. And it was a veteran group that really had everything down to a T from a communication standpoint of knowing how to pass things off, knowing where everyone was going to be, really leaning on Xavier McKinney on the back end. And then if they can continue to do that, plus add that pass rush up front with Micah Parsons, to me, that's where this becomes a little bit of a game changer, because I think some of it was a little bit smoke and mirrors, but I do think they have the ability to cover long enough and make it difficult, at least for opposing teams, where you're going to have to earn everything. And like the old Green Bay Packers defense felt like the Spider-Man pointing meme at all times, where everyone was pointing at each other like, what were you? You were supposed to have it. No, you were supposed to have it. And last year, we, knock on wood, really did not see that from the Packers. They were constantly aware of what everyone was supposed to be doing. So I think it's more of a team defense more than it is an individual defense where it's just one person is set to take on Justin Jefferson, which isn't going to end well. We'll see how much that they can continue that. If it can, I think they've got an opportunity. But if they can't, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore, etc., those guys could go on to have really big seasons against Green Bay secondary, which then becomes a problem. So again, all eyes on it for sure.
That's another spot where Micah Parsons helps, though. When we talked about this, when Ziggy and I were reacting, you got a guy like Micah. It's not just the production he brings; it's how he helps everyone else. The edge rushers in the secondary. If you get to the quarterback, makes everyone's life a little bit easier. Going off your question from a couple minutes ago, though, another thing that we have to kind of mention is the Lions' offense, and it's the interior of the O-line, right? And then with John Morton now, a new offensive coordinator, that's been like the big storyline. Ben Johnson's in Chicago. What is this Lions offense going to look like? And I really hope it doesn't look like last year, because I have this helpless feeling when we play Detroit now. You guys play them really close. You've beat them recently. Every time we've played them, it just feels like inevitable that they're going to find a way to win the game right now, which is insane to say about the Lions. I can't, in my lifetime, it was just, okay, we got 2 wins against Detroit. Maybe we slip up once every couple of years. And now I'm like, we go in, I'm like, oh my God, they're just going to push us around. Gibbs is going to run loose. Montgomery's going to get some short yardage touchdowns, and that's it. So I am really hoping, the goal to me is that Detroit doesn't look like the juggernaut that they were last year, because if they do, we could talk about the schedule all we want with them. When you're the hunter, you're going to win a lot of games, and I'm hoping that we see a step back from them, because last year was just 14 wins, and 14 wins, and we're sitting there with a wild card game. So I think that should be the NFC North goal as a whole. Is as much as we want to talk about Micah Parsons and what that does to the Packers' ceiling, we need to see Detroit take a step back, or else it's just going to be vying for second again.
There's 3 potential things that I'm really looking for closely on this Detroit team, because I think it's going to go a long way in defining who they are this year. The first is their defensive ends. And we know Aiden Hutchinson is coming back from injury. I thought he was the best defensive player in football last year prior to the injury. He was nearly unstoppable. What does he look like coming back from that injury, number 1? And then number 2, does he get any other pass rush help along that defensive line? Because all of a sudden, Marcus Davenport, who you guys know very well, has a resurgence and actually stays healthy for once. That's a problem. If all of a sudden they've got 2 of those, or even just, again, he looks remotely good.
We don't know Davenport. Yeah, we don't really know.
Neither does Detroit. Yeah, neither does Detroit. So that's the usual Marcus Davenport. If all of a sudden they get good Marcus Davenport, who's actually healthy somehow, some way, that changes things quite a bit. If they get anybody else rushing the passer besides Aiden Hutchinson, that becomes a big problem. If it's just Hutchinson, you can probably survive that. You can double team and chip and do the things that you need to do. Or if Hutchinson just isn't all the way back and he doesn't quite look like himself, that too, I think really changes things defensively for Detroit. So that's number 1. Number 2, I have some slight concerns with the Tesla hype of what if all of a sudden he is really good? I don't think it's necessarily going to be the case, especially right away. And I think he's a little bit banged up this week as well. But if all of a sudden you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, Laporta, Gibbs, and now you add this dude to the mix and he's really good, that just gives you a whole nother aspect to have to worry about with their offense. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is the interior of their offensive line. That's been such a strength. We kind of talked about it already, but Ragnow's gone, Zeitler's gone. Christian Mahogany is very unproven. Ratledge is a rookie, and I don't think Graham Glasgow is all that good. In general, at least in comparative to what they've had in the past. So that to me is that has to be their weakness, is in that middle. They cannot have more pass rushers than Aiden Hutchinson, and they cannot have this other weapon on top of all the other weapons that they have already. If those 3 things are there, and all of a sudden their defensive front looks good, their interior looks good, and Tesla looks good, I don't even know what we're doing anymore. It's going to be probably a very long season.
Ziggy, you were big on Tesla. Ziggy keeps texting me. He's like, Isaac Tesla's a problem. This is gonna be a problem. So Ziggy, you must be in agreement.
I mean, I have a terrible track record for getting excited about wide receivers. The last wide receiver I felt this excited about was Rondale Moore. And that was just obviously disaster. But one thing that worries me is the way that John Morton has been talking about this Lions offense. Obviously he's been getting asked tons of questions in interviews about what he wants to do with this team. And one of the things I think that really held the Lions back last year, going into things like the playoffs, was Ben Johnson's a great play caller, but sometimes he could get a little bit too cute. He loved the trick plays. He loved passing the ball. Hearing Morton come out and say that this team's strength is really in the running game, and that if there's anything he'd change, it would be dialing things back a little bit and playing to their strengths. Obviously, Ben Johnson said a lot of the creativity from the offense came from guys below them. I don't think that's going to totally go away. But I'm more scared of like the Gibbs-Montgomery pair than anything else this team can do. If they decide they want to run the ball a little bit more, we'll find out a lot about what this offensive scheme is going to look like in week 1, because you need to bring it against the Packers. This is not a game where you can sit back and save stuff for later in the year, but I'm worried about what he's going to be bringing out.
It's funny, Andy. Ziggy does have this infatuation with rookies as far as starting to hype them up.
It's fun.
I do it too. I do it all the time too. And I just remember we had a big fantasy draft in like a freshman or sophomore, whatever year it was that CEH came out. And I had like the 5th or 6th pick in my draft back home with my friends. And I was just debating over and over again, like who I want to take. And Ziggy just slowly over the course of like a week was like, CEH, he's the next Brian Westbrook, Paul. Like this guy, like Andy Reid's going to turn him into something unstoppable. I took him. And then, after like 2 weeks, it's just utter disaster. And I was like, all right, you know what? Maybe need to slow down.
To me again.
Let's close here with the Packers and Lions game. I'll go first since I think you guys are like 2 of the most loved people in Wisconsin. So I want to take the Packers, and I'm rooting for the Packers, actually, amazingly, which is treason.
Yeah, I get it.
I understand that that's treason, but I think Detroit is going to win the game. I just think Detroit's roster is so good, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, but my guess is this is a very close game that Detroit wins late.
Ziggy?
I'm always nervous when there's coordinator shifts. I think that's something, and you can see this over time. Generally, by the time the second half of the season rolls around, guys are a lot more comfortable. But even when you've got continuity in the building, it can be tough. I think the Packers, with the offensive continuity, the defensive continuity, and the big addition to juice everybody up, I'm feeling very good about the Packers week 1 in this one. They deserve to be favored.
I would have picked Detroit had they not traded for Micah Parsons in this game. I just think, again, Detroit would be maybe a little bit better prepared for this. I think what Ziggy just mentioned of like kind of juicing up this roster to, with the addition of Micah Parsons, to me, that's going to have everyone excited. The crowd's going to be going insane. I think that pushes them over the finish line. I think it would have been like Detroit by like 3 or less. I think now it's Green Bay by 3 or less.
All right. So according to this show here, behind enemy lines, we have the Vikings and Packers at 1-0. I like, shockingly, the Vikings and Packers both walk away 1-0 after week 1.